What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Joe Hammond, America's friendliest cop. And I want to thank you for joining us on our very first podcast, the JHOvercomes podcast with Joe Hammond. And I wanted to give everybody a big shout out for supporting us up until this point. You know, you guys have been with us. We had our pre-launch last week and you guys showed up and showed out. And I want to thank you all for showing up again. So we're going to get started right away. But what I want to tell you guys is this, is that today, I have someone very special. Okay. As you guys all know, this podcast is about overcoming adversity, right? And throughout this podcast, you are going to find different ways to overcome your adversity, whatever situation you're going through. And you guys know my background as a law enforcement officer, and I'm going to be speaking with another law enforcement officer today. But I want you guys to realize that this podcast is going to be open for anyone and everyone who's going through any kind of situation in their life. Any type of adversity that you're going through, I promise you that we are going to have special guests from all over the world who have gone through things, you know, at the highest level and have overcome it, you know, with excellence. So thank you for coming out. I'm happy that you're taking this time to invest in yourselves as far as listening goes and getting a way to overcome your adversity. So without any further ado, I want to jump right into the podcast today with our very special, our first guest. And listen, before I go any further, okay, I'm going to let her introduce herself because my words could never, ever, you know, add value to what she is. And, you know, I just wanted to let you guys know that today, okay, you are listening to somebody very special, okay? Someone who has been in law enforcement. You know, she's a Marine. She's someone who has, you know, performed at the highest level. And I promise you that today you're going to hear some different ways to overcome your specific adversity. Even though this situation may not apply to you, I'm sure that you can find ways to apply certain tactics and certain things that she uses to get over your adversity. So without further ado, I want to introduce, okay, all the way from Texas, okay, Miss Ann Carrizales. How are you, Ann? How's everything going?
Hey, Joe Hammond. So
Right.
proud of you. I'm excited at the launch of your new podcast. And man, I tell you, I'm honored. I'm honored that you had me on as your first guest. Thank you, man.
Well, I wanted to start off with someone who's very special, especially someone who has proof of overcoming their adversity. And I'm sure you're going to share that with us today.
I am. And I do want to piggyback off your it may not apply to you thing because, man, I'm telling you what, this journey has been, it's what some people, if you're not listening closely, they're going to hear a cop story, right? But
Mm.
man, this is so much more than that. This is a people story, a human being story. And it's going to be something I believe everybody can relate to, and that we've all been knocked on our butts here and there in life and had to figure our way back up. So I think it's going to resonate with pretty much everyone who listens.
Well, that makes me feel good because that's the one thing I want people to realize before we even get started is that, you know, you can take pieces from everybody's story who goes through something. Okay.
Oh
And
yeah,
one thing I also want us to realize is that, you know, just because we're police officers doesn't mean that we're not human beings. Okay.
right.
The stories that you're going to hear today are just life stories that happen in our line of work. Okay. And the person that's listening today, their line of work, it could apply to them. And you could just shift it a little bit. Okay. This is not going to be any different than any other human story that you heard other than the profession. Right. So
Right.
whenever you're ready, let's just jump right in. I want to hear about you. I'm sure the listeners want to hear about you as well.
Well, I'm a mama. I have two kiddos. Got two little. I like to call them two little resource suckers. I'm just kidding. They are my life, like any mama would say. They're not babies in the sense of little itty bitties, but they're still my babies. My son's 25.
You'll always be your babies.
My he's my little man cub. That one. He's my first baby, my little monkey,
Mhm.
and my little dove. She's about to be 17. Where did the years go, Joe?
Wow. They fly by. They
Where
fly
did
by.
the years go? Yes, I got two babies. I am a mom first, and that is something I had to learn to do. We'll talk about that later.
Right.
But they
Right.
come first, man. They come first.
Mm.
So I have a family. I am also a cop, as you mentioned, here in Texas. I'm a Texas Popo, Texas LEO.
Ooh.
Shout out to all my Texas peeps. Woo woo. However, I was born in Cali. I
Okay.
was born in Cali. My parents raised me in between the two states. My daddy was in the Marine Corps when I was born, so I was born on in Orange County while my dad was stationed on Camp Pendleton. Uh, Interestingly enough, I was actually stationed on Camp Pendleton when I gave birth to my son. So,
Wow. Okay.
pretty fun fact there. I am California born, but raised in between the states of Texas and California. So I have ties to both. Um, I work for a small agency that's a suburb of Houston, Texas,
Mhm.
and it's in Fort Bend County, whereas Houston is in Harris County. Meadows Place Police Department is in Fort Bend County.
Okay.
So,
Having been to Texas a few times myself, it's just such a huge place.
oh yes,
For you to say that you work in a small town, your small town is probably the size of most big towns in the cities that I live in and things in the city I live in. So, um,
right.
thank you so much for what you do. Seriously, thank you.
Oh, you know what? Honor and privilege to be able to do it. Honestly, um, you have to be wired a certain kind of way to do this work, as you well know, right? It
I
takes
agree.
a certain breed of person to be able to serve a cause bigger than themselves, and to at the blink of an eye be willing to sacrifice your own safety and your own life for someone you don't even know. So I'm just proud to have had God put that in my heart to be that type of a person, and it's been a great career. It's ever changing,
Mhm.
but that's what Marines do. Because yes, I am a
Sure,
Marine.
sure,
We
sure,
improvise, adapt, and overcome. So
sure.
it's been a beautiful journey. It has. Uh, I've really learned to embrace all of it. The
Right. And you said
horrific ones, the horrific experiences, and the great ones. I embrace
oh,
all.
oh, absolutely. And that's the one thing we need to do is embrace, okay, the situations that we go through in some way, shape, or form. And the one thing that stuck out to me that you just got finished saying was be willing at any time to put your safety on the line. Okay. And that's exactly why you're here today to talk about exactly how you did that and how you overcame that. And for those of you who don't know, okay, when we talk about safety, okay, it means for us as well. It's not just, being safe, saving the public, but a lot of times we're putting our own lives on the line and we need to be safe. And what happened was with you, okay, and was you were actually shot on duty. Okay, is that
Yes,
correct? Okay, and if
yes.
I'm not mistaken, you were shot twice, okay, on duty, and I'm sure you're going to tell us exactly how that played out.
Right, right. I was shot twice during one incident. So I've experienced two officer involved shootings in my career, actually within the span of 1 year. But the second one, the latter of the two, which happened in October of 2013, is the actual uh, officer involved shooting in which I was shot twice by some suspects that were in a car that I pulled over for a minor traffic violation. So,
And how did that start? I mean, what was and again, you're using words like minor traffic violations. Okay, these are things that we use.
right,
An average call, we know that things are not always routine. You know, we,
right,
we, we use terms like routine traffic stops and, things, and that just becomes a part of our language, but as we can see, this stop was anything other than average, excuse me, other than average, other than routine. Um, when you look at the results from it, right?
Well, yes, absolutely. And what I submit to your audience is that that's pretty much the way it is in a different capacity for most of us. We step out the door every day, whether we're going out to work, whether we're going out just to run errands or whatever life's going to throw at you. When you step out of that door at the beginning of the day,
Sure.
it might not flow the way you're normally expecting or accustomed to it flowing, and
Gotcha.
that's life, man.
Mhm.
That's the way life is. It just throws punches and combinations
Sure.
uh, when you least expect it, and I think that's a part of life for everyone, and it's a part of preparation, preparing for that time when it
And that
comes
goes
for
that
you.
goes back to the top of our conversation. We talked about how, the stories that we share can be applied to anyone, not just police.
Anyone.
Just because, I walk out the door and it's a more dangerous profession doesn't mean that you can't walk out the door with a less dangerous profession and never come home again. You know,
Correct.
and
Correct.
not to make it morbid, but you and I have responded to calls, responded to jobs, responded to, whether it's a car accident or whether it's something where, that person thought that they were going home,
Right.
that day. So, and it can happen to any one
Right.
of us. So I just want to, again, not to make it morbid, but to make sure that people understand that this podcast is about everyone, not just law enforcement. We are
Right.
human beings just
Right.
like you, and we want to make sure you know that.
Right. The uniqueness of this story is that it kind of offers the public a glimpse into what it is that we face during our normal execution of our duties, during the normal everyday tasks that we as law enforcement officers have to deal with. So it's going to be interesting in that respect to give you that insight into just one traffic stop in the course of my shift on that particular night, October the 26th of 2013. I made a traffic stop that I always say almost became my very last when I pulled a car over that had three MS-13 gang members in that car. I
Mm.
didn't know who I was pulling over. And that's the challenge of traffic stops for every law enforcement officers for law enforcement officers across the country and all over the world. We do not know when we make that stop who's in that car, what their intentions are, what they've been doing, what they think you might think they were doing.
Right.
So it's just so unpredictable, and it's dangerous.
And that's the
And
one thing that people don't realize, that I may be pulling you over for a taillight or just,
correct,
you failed the signal. I don't
correct,
know at that point that I'm pulling over somebody violent,
correct.
walking up to what potentially might be my very, very, very last stop. And oftentimes things like this go south when, and it does start as something as small as your motor vehicle stop was. And
Right.
if we're not aware, okay, we can get the bad end of that.
Oh, yeah. I, and along with lots and lots of other officers can testify to that. This car that I pulled over because they were, uh, first of all, what caught my attention about this car on this particular night was that it was sitting in a it had its left blinker on. It was sitting at a traffic light, and it was not in the left turning lane. So as I was watching the car, I thought to myself, "Oh, is this guy going to turn left from the wrong lane?"
Right.
The light was red, and I thought maybe he might turn left from the wrong lane, but also through a red light. So I was just kind of looking at the car as I was driving in the direction of the car as I was at a major intersection within the city.
Mhm.
And as I approached, there were just different things going on. Particularly that it sat through a couple go cycles of the light. The light cycles to green and the car doesn't move, which is indicative of a few things. It could be the car broke down. They needed some help because they were having some car problems. It
So
could be that there was an intoxicated driver, somebody drunk at the wheel, passed out at the light, because that never happens, right?
never ever.
So, and at the time I was working night shifts. So these are some of the more common things that we see when we see a car stopped in the middle of the road and the light has cycled and they haven't moved. It could be a couple of different things.
Well, like you said,
Sometimes it's
working nights, having worked the midnight shift a time or two in my
yes,
career, you know, again, those are some of the things that aren't very, very odd to us. Okay,
mhm,
but again, it is sort of a red flag. It may be somebody who just fell asleep at the traffic light. We just pull up and blow the
mhm.
horn and say, "Get on your way," because we understand it, right? It's
Right,
not
right.
that that's not possible. But also more times than not they are intoxicated that hour of the night.
Right. Or they're having a medical emergency.
Correct.
We're,
Right.
and if one thing you know about Texas is we got some good eats over here, right?
That's
We
true.
got some good eats, and it's not necessarily healthy food. So,
Serious
we
barbecue in
have
Texas.
we
Serious
have a
barbecue.
lot of parts of Texas where we have a lot of issues with diabetes, right? So
Okay.
we see a lot of the public that experience medical issues with diabetes, and
Okay.
so sometimes it could be somebody having a medical problem, and that's why their car stopped there. But literally something that minor as the car was stopped, and I was going, what's going on there? Because it can also mean that there's a predator, and they're
Sure.
sitting there waiting, and they're searching for prey. So
Sure.
as a police officer, we have a responsibility to kind of go through our mental Rolodex of what are the possibilities, what could this possibly be, and
Correct.
we have a lot of responsibility to protect the people in the car that's stalled there, the people who may be driving on the streets. So there's lots of things going on in that moment, and for me, it was just about, let me just watch this car, let me see what they do. Do they need my help? So that was my thought process as I passed the car at the intersection, and I looked and I saw that there were two people at least, because that's all I saw. There was a total of three.
Mhm.
But when I passed the car, what I cued in on was the two people sitting in the front, a driver and a front seat passenger. They were Hispanic. They were conscious. So I knew that, well, there's nobody unconscious behind the wheel, so we can put that little possibility aside, and that's basically what we do during these ever changing situations. And when I flipped around, I decided to initiate a stop of the car, but the car still hadn't moved, and there was other vehicles even at that hour, well after 3 a.m., that were having to go around this car to get through this light. So I went ahead and initiated a traffic stop, see what was going on there.
Okay. So you went through all your avenues, and you drive past the car, you see that nothing's really abnormal inside the vehicle, and then what happens then?
Well, I made contact with the driver of the vehicle. Initially, I had anticipated I would make a passenger side approach.
Okay.
I got out of the car and I did what I do often when I initiate traffic stops is I stand outside of the car and I just watch. I just look, watch,
Sure.
take it all in.
Sure. Sure.
If time is on my side, I will give it some seconds to kind of look around, take in what I'm dealing with,
Sure.
um, and see if there's any other pre-attack indicators or red flags that are screaming at me from this car. Sometimes you'll catch them and you'll catch them all. And sometimes you will only catch a few here and there.
Right. Right.
And for me, there were things I picked up on that I focused on. And there were other things that looking back as you watch the video, go, oh, look, wow, that was also going on. And I missed that.
Yeah.
And but the beauty of that is I was alive to be able to do that, to watch that video many years later, a couple of years later, and study it and say, oh, from now on, moving forward, these are things I'm looking for right
Right.
out the gate,
And
right?
I'm sure that some people have asked you in the past, what would you have done differently, or if there anything that you done different that you had that did what you would have done differently. And you know what? Oftentimes, sometimes it's nothing. And to
Right.
me, it sounds like your positioning. To me, it sounds like tactically you made the right moves. To me, it sounds like you made the situation as safe as you possibly could until what happens next after that.
Right. Because I mean, tell the control freak cops this, but we can't control everything, right?
Correct. Correct.
You can only control what you do. And I tell my kids this all the time. And I tell my young rookies this when I'm training, like, you can control you. That's what
Sure.
you can control.
Sure.
You know, officers, we can complain about administration, we can complain about the public, we can complain about all of these things, but
Mm,
we can only control what we do. And so there were things that I was putting into effect that night that were good and they were right on and they were smart things to do. My positioning on the car as I approached the car, and I took position at the rear passenger window behind the driver. I never, as I cued into, oh, there's a third guy in the car. I never passed him. I stayed behind that rear passenger. So there were things that I was doing right. And excuse me, when I have been asked that question about what I would do differently, is there something you would do differently? Um,
yeah, probably I wouldn't have stopped that car that night.
yeah, right, exactly.
Probably the
Well,
only thing I
maybe I
would.
wouldn't have stopped that car,
Right.
right?
Right.
Let
Right.
that one just go on by.
Right.
Um, that's the that would be the no brainer, funny response to it. For
Right.
me, you know, I'll tell you though. For me, honestly, Joe, there's not a thing I would change
Mm,
about that night. If I had it to do, and God knows my heart, if I had to do it all over again, I would stop that car, knowing what would happen. Uh, and I likely wouldn't have changed too much because then I wouldn't be this woman that you're talking to.
fair
I
enough.
wouldn't have achieved so much growth through that pain, right?
But
Um,
that's what our adversity is about, right? And when we're going through different adversities, there's always a lesson learned inside the adversity. Always a lesson learned.
well, there's a
So
lesson there.
yeah,
It's up to us if we learn it. If we choose to
absolutely,
learn it, right? There's a lesson
absolutely,
there.
absolutely.
Um, but yeah, so I don't think there's a whole lot that I would have changed per se tactically. Um, but there was a mistake. There's something that does pop into my mind when someone asks me that, and that I did kind of let my ego get to me a
Mm,
little bit. And I say this when I'm training rookies, and I say this to other officers, like if you could take something out of your police work, if you had to choose one thing to pull out of your police work, take that ego out of your police work. It doesn't have a place there.
Right.
It's not going to serve you. It will
Right.
only serve to get your butt in trouble, right? But
Yeah.
we're human, and
Sure.
we're imperfect creatures, and sometimes we allow our ego to kind of dictate our response to things,
Well,
which
sure.
is
And
why
that's one
we
of the
get
biggest things, like when you're a young officer, the first thing you do if somebody says something sideways to you is the first thing you do is probably the worst thing. You step into their face and say, "What'd you say?" So
right,
you've taken away all of the advantage. You've taken away the space, the time, because you have let your
your
ego
ego.
take over.
Yeah.
Correct. So how did
Yes.
you your ego take over that night? What happened when it did this to you?
That particular night, I had a short dialogue. It wasn't a whole lot of dialogue.
Okay.
And if you've seen the video, you see how fast this all goes down. But there was a short dialogue between the driver and I. And I didn't have any dialogue with the guy that was sitting behind the driver. In fact, you know, he had that little stare going on that if I don't look at you and I don't move, you're not going to see me at all. Like he's sitting there like this, like he's sitting there like this, right?
Okay.
Like I'm not going to look at you, I'm not going to move, and if I don't look at her, she's not going to see me sitting here. That type of thing.
Red
That's
flag
always
number three. Red flag number three.
that's always very, very creepy, and it
Right.
gives me goosebumps whenever someone does that to me because normal
Sure.
people, when you approach the car, they look at you,
They look at you.
right? They look at you with either the stank eye or they give you a smile or confusion, whatever it is, but they look at you. And
Well,
this guy didn't do that.
everybody always looks at the cop. It doesn't matter where you are. You can walk in the restaurant and they don't
Yes.
realize one thing I'm thinking about is please don't trip. Please don't fall. Please don't fall because I know that people are looking at me. I'm going to be on YouTube. I'm going to be all over the place. So when someone doesn't look at you, okay,
Mhm.
especially in a situation like that, just even a glance, okay, that is a red flag. That's a
Yeah,
red flag.
I had a friend ask me that. Why is that a big deal if they don't look at you?
Mm, mm.
So I
Because
say,
most people,
if you walk into a business,
yeah,
say to go get some gas or a pack of gum or whatever it is you're going to get, something to drink, a water.
sure,
And the
sure.
guy behind the counter, as you walk in, goes like this,
Mm,
right? And then you're standing here and he never looks at you, never says a word. And you have business there. Would you not think that's strange? And he's like, yeah, I could see the point, right? So the
correct.
guy never looks at me. The other passenger in the front seat only, I think, said one thing to me. And the dialogue was short and mainly between the driver and I.
Mm,
I picked up on a lot of the pre-attack indicators there. By this time, I've already called for backup because as we're pulling into this driveway into a trailer park where we
mhm.
never really had any problems out of this place. Um, as we pull in there, uh, it's dark, and but I'm familiar with that area, and it's to me, it's not a red flag. I'm actually thinking, well, the guy probably lives here, and he's just trying to make it home, and he's probably having car trouble or has been drinking, and so he's just trying to get home. But I radioed in before the car pulled in there. I had radioed in and let dispatch know that the car was still slow rolling because it had not slow rolling, the term that we use when a
Right,
car doesn't immediately pull
right.
over. So if I initiate overhead lights and initiate a traffic stop and the car continues at a slow rate of speed, it's sometimes they'll even tell you by sticking their hand out the window, like I'm going to pull in over
Right.
here, or they'll
Somewhere
hit their
well lit
hazard
or
lights.
right, somewhere well
Right.
lit where they feel
Right.
safe, and
I'm
that's
gonna
normal.
pull in.
Sure,
Right, of course, you want them to feel safe, I do. I don't have
absolutely.
a problem with that.
Right,
Uh, when there's a place for them to pull over, but I'm not gonna follow you for a mile down the road while you do that.
right,
It's not
right, right.
okay either. So, when I had let dispatch know the car was still slow rolling, I had a partner key up and asked me if I wanted a backup unit. And by this time, we're pulling into the trailer park, and I said, "No, I'll advise," which just basically means I'm gonna do that. I'm good right now. I'm okay with it, but if I need something, I'll let you know. Basically, that's all that means.
Sure. Nothing
So that's
exigent,
what.
no immediate threat that I feel
Right,
feel okay with this. Okay.
right. I'm okay with this. I'll advise you on what's going on. And boy, did I, right?
Sure.
So we pull in there. I have a small dialogue with the driver, and then All the telltale signs are there. As I make my approach to the car, he's kind of watching me walk up. He's rubbernecking, what we refer to as rubbernecking, looking back for me as I come up. And there's just a lot of other, little pre-attack indicators there. And then we have our short dialogue. I could tell he's lying when I ask for ID. He's doing the 50 million pat down, looking for a driver's license that we both know he doesn't have.
Yeah.
And we enter into this game of kind of like a cat and mouse game of, I know you're full of crap and you're lying,
Mhm.
and he knows I know. And so
Right.
we're kind of like, I don't know, we're kind of sizing each other up, feeling each other out, like what's going
Sure.
to happen.
Sure.
But when things like this happen, traffic stops or calls for service, there's always like this pivotal moment. And
Mhm.
and any law enforcement officer has that I've ever met, I've never met one that has never experienced that moment where you go, okay,
Yeah.
it's about to go down.
Aim on. Right.
We're going to do this. What sucks for the officer is we don't necessarily know what this is all the time,
Right.
right?
Right. We just know
So
that we've gotten to a point right now of no return.
no
We have
return.
to go further. We're obligated to go further at this time because something just isn't right. So
Right.
engage, and this is what happens. We get to that point. So go ahead.
And if you've been in this career for any amount of time and you get some experience under your belt, you start to be able to recognize those moments.
Mhm.
You start to learn how people communicate with you without ever saying a word.
Sure.
You should start to learn these things. And there's a moment where you realize that this is not going to go well, and this person's going to fight. He's going to fight. He's going to run. He hasn't said, "Hey, I'm going to kick your ass," or "I'm going."
Right.
He hasn't, necessarily anything that he's said. It's just that he or she, by all accounts of their
Mhm.
body language, has told you, "I'm going to fight, resist, or run."
Right. Right.
So we were there. And I'll tell you what that pivotal moment was for me during that traffic stop. It was when that driver of the car,
Mhm.
he leaned his body slightly to the right and he
Right.
mumbled something to the front seat passenger next to him under his breath. Now, I heard enough to hear that it was in Spanish, but I didn't hear it clearly enough to know what he said. So I didn't know what he said, but it was in that moment, as I circle back around to that big
Yeah.
question of what you would have done different. It was in that moment that I let my ego kind of creep in, and I
Mm.
got I got pissed
Right.
because I thought, how dare you do this? How dare you plot on me and I'm standing right here? You must think I'm stupid. You
Right.
must think I'm so stupid that I don't know you're doing this, right? And so I kind of let my ego creep in, and I got a little annoyed. And
Sure.
I
Sure.
remember saying something.
Because you are at this point, you're being polite. Okay. You're being kind. All you really want is answers to the average questions, correct?
Right,
And at this point, now you're insulting my intelligence. Okay. Now it's, and again, we have that out of 100 contacts, okay, if we make that contact on that 100th time, 99 out of those contacts, we're going to be good with that. Okay, we can
right,
control that. But at this point right now, you're trying to make a fool out of me. I'm in the middle of the street. It's nighttime. It's late, dude. Can you help me out here? Now you're going to
right,
insult intelligence, right?
right, right. Exactly. That's exactly how it feels. And it's this feeling of, you're insulting my intelligence. But I've now, granted, I was assertive. I
Mhm.
was not, I was assertive. Hey, what are you doing?
Right.
you know I'm coming from work. Where's work? I'm coming from work. I know we've already established that you're coming from work, but you're not answering my questions. And all of these signs are red flag, red flag, red
Right.
flag.
Right.
So that's what I was dealing with. I knew he was lying. By this time, I've called for a backup unit. I've
Mhm.
advised, okay, I'm gonna need a backup unit, and all I did was say check by,
Okay.
which tells that's it, check by, right?
And at what point did your ego affect your decision, and that made the turning point turn south for you?
So I called for a check by, and I wanted to keep them talking.
Mhm.
But then he does that little dip to the right.
Okay.
Because my idea was, this is a bunch of shenanigans, a bunch of
Mhm.
bullcorn, a bunch of malarkey, whatever you want to call it. But it's a
Yeah.
bunch of lies, and we're not going to get anywhere. So I need backup to come so we can continue to investigate here.
Right.
That was my thought process. So I was wanting to keep them talking. But when he leaned over and mumbled something to his passenger, I got upset and offended that he would think I was so stupid that I wasn't going to pick up on that. So I
Gotcha.
leaned forward. I broke position.
Mm.
I leaned slightly forward and kind of dipped my head forward a little bit. And at one point, he's like, I don't have my license. I don't have a license. And I go, well, what do you have? And they showed me.
Yeah.
So
And it was,
that's when it all went down.
okay. Now, was it the driver, or was it the passenger who brandished the weapon and fired the shot?
No, it was the front seat passenger. The guy who was sitting to the right of the driver, the one he mumbled at, the one
Okay.
he said something to, is the one who he produced a firearm in just, I mean, you're talking about a guy who was sitting in the front seat by the driver. And the next thing I know, he was pushing into the back seat and out that rear passenger window.
Okay, so he shot you through the rear window.
Right, which was partially down at the time.
Mm. Okay.
So when I leaned forward, I gave him just enough of a target here
Yeah.
that his first, and you know, it all happened very quickly. I didn't even see him move around, spin around in his seat and come through the back seat. I didn't
Right.
see any of that. It was just he wasn't there. And the next thing I know, I didn't see him produce the weapon, but I actually looked at it right
Okay.
as he shot me because I saw the muzzle flash shoot out of my face.
Okay. So at that point, what is your first react? Do you immediately think I've been shot? Do you immediately think, okay, I need to retreat, return fire? What happens at that point? Because you said you were shot twice. Was it two
Right.
quick shots at that point? Was it a double tap to you?
No, it
What?
was not a double tap.
Okay. Okay.
So first thought was, it's happened. It's happening. I'll
Mm.
never, as long as until I take my last breath, I'll always remember that that was my first thought. It's happened. It's happening.
Yeah.
In both of those tenses.
Yeah.
I'm such a grammar Karen that
Yeah.
that I literally corrected my it's happened. It's happening. No, it is. It's happening. You know what I mean? It was
Okay.
like in both of those tenses. And then I actually, you know, the whole, obviously it hurt really bad,
Mm.
throws my head back. And my eyes were still locked in on the suspect,
Okay.
um, which it's really not shocking to me because as my head's flying back, I still have my eyes locked. But what does that come from? Right? Why are my eyes still locked in and fixated on the threat? Well, because I come from a long history um, of I have an entire fight career where under my belt where I was a competitive boxer and I competed for
Okay.
years in boxing and I'm a former fight champion.
So
And
you're used to taking blows to the face
they say,
and not
well,
okay.
of course, punches to the face are different than shots to the face, but
Right.
is it like at the end of the day, it's all about the war, right?
Yeah.
And I believe it's very, 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 very true that eh, you're only going to go where your mind has taken you, right? You're gonna drop back to the fork, you know, right? If they lay out four forks and three spoons and all kinds of, you're gonna grab the fork you're accustomed to using. So I believe, I know that's what happened to me in that moment. I kind of just reverted back to the training and the training of being in the Marine Corps, the training of my fight career. Because as I turned this way and started to protect my face, I exposed like the left side of my Kevlar vest. So if I raise my hand this way, now
Yeah.
my armpit in this area is exposed, right?
Oh, right.
So as I'm turning to get the heck out of Dodge, because I just took a round to the face, my ears ringing. It's a really loud, like, you know, just it's indescribable sometimes to how that was and what that felt like. But as I'm turning and I have that area of my body exposed, the second shot rings out.
Mm.
And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, they're trying to kill me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's bizarre because you know they shot you in the face, which yeah,
Mhm.
that probably ought to have told me that they're trying to kill me, right?
Right.
I know that,
Right.
but it's not until the second shot because I'm still trying to process, like, wow, this is happening.
Right. Right.
And then the second shot rings out, knocks me back. It kind of manhandles me.
Mhm.
And I remember saying, oh God, my vest didn't catch that. Because I could feel that bullet go into my chest.
Mm.
It was incredible pain and burning and knowing that my vest didn't catch it as far as in my thought process was going at the time. So
So everything that could go wrong here, okay, is
it did.
going wrong. Okay.
Mhm,
And you know, like that one vulnerable spot that we have for those who don't know, who have never worn um, a vest, okay, a bullet resistant vest.
mhm,
Okay, we have these vulnerable areas that we constantly protect. And when she exposed herself to that, okay, I'm sure that you actually when this second round hits you, okay, because let's be real, like if they just want to get away, even if that first round was just the round to like throw you off and then drive off,
mhm.
okay, that could be going through your mind. But that second round, when that second round hits you, it's like, oh crap, they're trying to
No,
kill me.
they're really trying to kill me. Right.
Correct. Correct.
Right. It's and and it's all about the brain. It's just trying to process all of this as it's happening, and that takes time. It really does, and it's just trying to catch up with everything as it's happening. And I remember thinking that, oh my God, they're trying to kill me because it's almost like, okay, my turn.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
shot at
Yeah.
me. Now I get
Right.
to shoot back at you. But it just doesn't go down like that. And that seems like an unreasonable thought to have.
Mhm.
But until you are in the crap like that, until you are experiencing it, it's nothing like you'd ever imagined it to have been. It's not Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's real. And this bullet has torn through my face, and this other one has penetrated my chest. And I remember as I was being thrown back by the force of that second round,
Yeah.
just telling myself, don't go down, don't go down, don't go
Mm.
down. Because I could feel my legs, they wanted to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And knowing that if I could help it, I just wasn't going down because I didn't want to be laying down behind this car. So I thought for sure they'd just run me on over, right?
Yeah.
So I remember just saying, "Don't go down, don't go down," and then this final thought process of you know because it's really interesting how time distortion works when you are going through something like that.
Yeah.
Um, when your heart rate shoots up and you have this surge of adrenaline due to sudden onsets of stress, how that can change things for you physiologically, the response to that. And if you've never experienced something like that, your fine motor skills may leave you. You may have tunnel vision. You may
Sure. Sure.
have where you can only see what you're looking directly at. You may have issues with auditory exclusion, meaning you don't hear at all,
Yeah.
or what you do hear sounds like Charlie Brown's teacher, right? Wah, wah,
Yeah.
wah,
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 wah, wah.
right?
That's right. Right.
or things go super slow, and
Extreme.
then they go boom back to real time again. So it can be very confusing.
So let me ask you this: what caliber round was it that they were firing at you?
There were 3 rounds fired in that trailer park. There was 9 millimeter,
Mhm.
45, and 40. I shot a 40.
Okay.
The guy who shot me in the face shot me with a 9 millimeter,
Mm.
and the guy who shot the 45 apparently didn't, according to the investigators, didn't hit me with the 45 caliber round bullet.
Okay. Okay.
I have always said
Yeah.
and
Mm.
maintained that the bullet that shot me in the face, yeah, okay, 9 millimeter, because I stared at the gun. I
Yeah.
watched him shoot me with it. I knew. I identified the gun out
Sure.
of a
And
lineup.
if you could, and if you know weapons, you can look at the
Mhm.
barrel and know whether it's a
Kind of know, right?
45 or whether it's a 9 millimeter. Right. Okay.
Mhm.
So you're hit twice with the nine. Okay, with the 9 millimeter. Am I correct? Twice with the nine
Yes,
millimeter. Okay.
yes,
And thank God the 45 wasn't to the face. But either way, it's a terrible, terrible situation.
right.
You're telling yourself, don't go down, don't go down. But see, that doesn't happen just in that moment. That warrior mentality there has been built over time, okay, over situations of talking to yourself in a positive way, over talking to yourself in a way that I'm never going to give up. And we like to think, Okay, we like to believe that we're going to react a certain way when certain things happen, but like you said, your fine motor skills will go, auditory, all these things that you're used to having. Okay, you all of a sudden don't have. Fight or flight has kicked in, and you realize that these people are trying to kill me, trying to take my life.
Right.
I have people I want to go home to. Okay,
Mhm.
what happens then when you tell yourself, "Don't go down"?
I have this final thought. Uh, you're in a gun battle here, girl. Any day you want to start shooting.
Mm, mm,
Because it felt like forever. It felt
yeah.
like they were just shooting me. And I was like, la, 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 having this conversation with myself, what I refer to in my presentations as conversations with yourself.
Mm,
Um, and it does. It feels like a 15-minute conversation in a split second.
yeah. Yeah.
And I had to basically put some fire under my own ass and say, hey, you're in a gun battle here, girl. Any day you want to start shooting. And I whipped around and I returned fire as they sped off because that's what these cowards do.
Mm.
They try to kill you and then they drive away.
Okay, so wait. You actually returned fire.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a whole nother animal. When that fight or flight kicks in, you're very justified in running and hiding behind
Mhm.
your vehicle, taking cover, I should say.
Mhm.
And you're very, very justified in that instant. But to have the wherewithal to gain, the thought process back, to have your training kick in, to say, you know what, I need to return fire. Okay, that's a whole nother animal because you're hit. The shock is hit. You hit to the face. You hit to the body. I need to get into the fight. And like you said, you're in a gunfight, girlie. This is real
Mhm.
now. This is not. We're not at the
This
range.
is not
We're not
training.
watching TV. This is real live stuff. What do you do? So that's when you revert back to your highest level of training at that point.
Right. Um, or this is when you see what you're made of, you know.
I'm gonna what,
Um,
what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a clip from that night. Okay.
okay.
And what I want to do is I want to make sure that people um, can sort of understand, what it is exactly that you were dealing with at that situation. And I'm going to play the audio. Okay. And for those of you who are watching the video, you can watch the video. But this is what it sounded like.
Shots fired, I'm hit. All right, I'm still conscious. I'm gonna. He's pulling out of this. In. Hold on. Looks like. Looks like he's southbound. Southbound.
Okay. Were you able to hear that fine?
Yes.
Okay. So, so now
Every night for a lot of years.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So not only do you return fire, okay, not only do you get your your bearings back, okay. When you return fire, were you able to strike the vehicle? Did something happen to their vehicle?
Yes. I think I did 2 double taps, and
Okay.
the first round took out the rear window, and
Oh,
the rounds just were going through the into lodging into different places in the cabin of that car at that point as they're driving off.
okay. So
Um,
you were able to return fire.
mhm.
Now here is when I first watched the video, okay, and this is where you were deemed a hero by many law enforcement personnel, okay, and saying what a warrior at this point, because not only did now you're justified in letting these people drive off, okay, and nobody would blame you for that. No, not
Right.
not an officer in the world will blame you for that if you do not want to get back into this fight. But not only
Right.
that, you get back into your vehicle. Okay, you get back into your vehicle and initiate a pursuit. Okay, so you're shot in the face, you're shot in the body, and you return fire and you initiate a pursuit. Okay, and
Right.
I want to go back and I want to pick up again where we are with with that taking place. Okay.
We're making a left onto Blue Bonnet. A left onto Blue Bonnet. Dispatch, be advised. I've been shot in the face, and I know that I've taken one on my back. I'm just fine right now. Three Hispanic males. I was shot by the driver's side passenger. They returned fire. Their rear window. They've been shot out. He's firing. He's firing. Right there, time. I need to stop.
Okay. Wow. 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 Okay. And there's so many different things going on here. Okay, from a law enforcement perspective. Okay, and if anyone ever has been in a high speed pursuit, if anyone has ever been in, you know, a gun battle, whatever topics we're discussing here today, to have all of that happen within a span of 15 minutes, okay, this is the true warrior mentality. This is that mother bear. Okay, this is the fighter. This is all the things that are coming back to you from all of your life, not just law enforcement, but from your life, the things that you have gotten through in your lifetime. And you're driving at high speeds. Okay,
Yes.
trying your best to make sure that the public remains safe. You're not only traveling at high speeds, but you're calling out the pursuit. Okay. And a lot of times people don't realize that sometimes you have a pursuing officer and you have another officer that says, listen, I'll take the mic, you just drive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we'll call out the pursuit for you. So you're handling that as well. You're handling the pursuit. You're injured. Okay. You have blood coming down your face. You don't know if you're going to live or die at this point because you don't know what the after effects of this is going to be. And you're able to give detail by detail of the exact location of where you are right then and there, which in and of itself is huge. Okay, because there's been times when I'm sure that you've heard officers get into a foot pursuit or a car pursuit, and we don't know where we are. Okay, because we've gone into a strange area or a strange neighborhood, and sometimes we don't know our exact location. So what happens is with this is that you are handling it all. You're notifying dispatch, and I can hear your partners, okay, answering the radio saying we're on our way. We're on our way, which again, I'm sure you didn't hear at first, but
I
to
heard.
okay, good, good. To have all of those things, okay, happening at one time. And and here's the biggest thing. They are still shooting at you
Right.
as you're pursuing this vehicle.
Mhm.
As you're pursuing this vehicle. Now you get here, and I paused it here for a moment, as you can see right here in this video. You get out after everything is done. Okay, you get out the car and you have a chance to gather your thoughts. Okay, which is not really long because now there's a bunch of different things that happen, and I encourage everyone to go back to the video where not only were you pursuing into an area where you didn't really feel safe, but you get on the radio and you tell all of the responding officers, don't come into this area because I don't feel safe here. I don't know where they are. I've lost them. I don't know what kind of danger you're going to put yourselves in. So you have completely removed the selfish part of your pursuit. You have completely removed the ego part of your pursuit because you're putting your other members first. I don't want you to come in here. I don't want you to drive into an area where there's
Correct.
danger and you don't know where these people are. And not only that, these are things that we do when we get on the radio and we say, slow it down. We'll tell the dispatch, slow them down. Okay. Because we don't want someone to crash while they're on their way here. Because as of right now, there's no immediate threat. There's no imminent threat right now. And I'm okay. But right here is where I paused it. And at this point is when your boss, your supervisor, or your partner walks up to you and you're able to collapse at that point. But the one thing I noticed about your body language here was you stood up. Okay, you stood up, you had your chest out, you had your shoulders back, and you're able to explain what exactly took place, because this is the first time your partners are seeing you. They're
Right.
thinking worse. They're thinking, oh my God, I got to get to her. I got to get to her. Because this is what we do. We going for one of our own. It's balls to the wall. It's foot to the pedal, foot to the metal, to the pedal to the metal, and we have to get there. But right now is that pivotal point where you say, I can either collapse on this ground,
Right.
they sit on the curb and let this all happen to me, or I can stand up and produce something that's going to be productive, and then I'll take care of me afterwards.
Well, just like the point in the actual stop itself, that pivotal moment that I talked about.
Sure.
So we have these as well throughout our lives. They're pivotal moments, and sometimes we miss them. And that was me getting out of the car and trying to get back in sync with my own body, because at that point, and if you watch this video, at that point, you hear me say, I have to stop, right? Because I can feel myself driving the car. I know I'm driving the car to make that turnaround to get back out of that area to a safer area. And kind of the thought process was to set up a perimeter and wait for the cavalry to come, right? But I couldn't feel my legs. And I knew that I couldn't feel my legs, and I knew why that I couldn't feel my legs. Why I couldn't feel them was because I was having this adrenaline dump that can affect you in that way. So for me, having been there before in my fight career, and also preparing my mind for something like this type of a situation, a deadly encounter, a deadly attack on my life, uh, I know that you have to really reel yourself in as you start to feel the effects of an adrenaline dump. So I got out of the car and leaned over that push bumper so that I could attach my legs and brain back together.
Yeah.
I needed to feel them again. And this is the moment, that you talk about, this pivotal moment. A lot of us in life, we're right here several times where we went through something super traumatic,
Right.
and something that would really make you feel like, okay, am I going to go down? Hmm. Am I not going to go down? Nobody would blame me if I went down. Nobody would blame me if I fell into, my own little foxhole and stayed there, right? It's the same concept. It's just this was in the line of duty, right? So the first time was the stop as we're initiating the stop. The second time was after, I was hit and making that decision to pursue, because I did this self-assessment of myself and I knew that I was still in the fight. And then I pursued. And then now I'm getting out of the car and I'm putting myself and my brain and my body back together, like getting them in sync, so that I could continue to do whatever it was that I needed to do until I could relinquish this scene over to somebody else.
Yeah. Right.
The fact of the matter is, we have a job to do, and we have to do that job and see it through.
Sure.
Same thing goes with life, right? Life does. I tell my kids this all the time. Life doesn't care.
Right.
Life doesn't care. I tell my little one.
Right.
No, life doesn't care if you get depressed.
Yeah.
Life doesn't care if you are so anxious that you don't want to step out your front door.
Yeah.
The bills still come.
Yeah. Your
debtors want those bills paid. Like, you have to figure out a way to overcome that stuff. And so in that moment, it was appropriate. I had to overcome for that moment. Then they put me in the ambulance, took me to the trauma center, and patched Humpty Dumpty back together again. And it was years of surgery after that. I went through a lot of surgeries on my face, reconstruction, lost half my earlobe, and lost half my left breast, and had to have that reconstructed. And so it was a lot of stuff, and it was a lot of physical pain, and all of that was the absolute 100% easy part.
And that's the one thing that I don't want to wow. The one thing that I want the listeners to hear is that night was just the beginning.
Just the beginning.
Right.
Super easy part.
That was
And it wasn't easy by any means, right?
Right.
But can you, I mean, The thing is, I know more people this resonates with more people than we think.
Yeah.
Like, you might not have been, shot, but I'm sure you've been knocked on your behind because something really took the wind out of your sails and left you feeling like you didn't know if you were going to make it through this, right? Like, how am I going to make it through this?
Yeah.
Lord, I can't. How many times do we find it? I can't do this. I can't do this. Yes, you can.
Still
Yes, you
standing.
can, right? Because look at you. You're listening to this podcast. So there's been something in life already that you've already made it through because you're here listening to this, right? And so that's kind of, for me, that was a pivotal moment, another pivotal moment. And I've had many, many, many of them, as do most people, where I had to sit there and go, what am I going to do with this now?
Yeah.
I had no idea, Joe, what I was supposed to be doing with it. I was so confused by the attention that this got.
Yeah.
This is all back in 2013 when things were different.
Yeah.
It was a different time politically for all of us, and so the amount of awareness that this was getting, it just was mind blowing to me. I didn't understand like why all this attention. There's lots of cops who've done such amazing bravery, that they were saying this was so incredibly brave, blase, blase. And I thought, there's lots of cops doing this stuff all the time. You know, I just happened to be that girl on that night that pulled that car over. And so, more than anything, I have found myself trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing with it. What is this lesson that God's trying to teach me? And it was a journey because I had no idea that surviving that was going to be the easiest part of the journey. No
Yeah.
idea. I wasn't prepared. I was ill prepared for what was to come for me and my family. And because of that, because of not being prepared, because I had never learned about it or taught how to prepare for it,
Yeah.
because of that, we suffered tremendously, tremendously. Uh, it's interesting that you were saying to your listeners, um, she's shot and she's pursuing and she's got all these things going on in the car, and this is true bravery. This is true warrior. What you said earlier. Now imagine that the rest of the world, to include your law enforcement brothers and sisters, your peers, are telling you that what you did was great work and it was amazing and it was brave.
Yeah.
But the ones that you hold most dear,
Mm.
my little man cub and my little dove,
Yeah.
that was the very thing
Yeah.
that made them feel like she loves that job more than she loves us, right? It was the very thing that caused so much turmoil in my house. Um, my actions, getting in that car to pursue, that's what everybody went, wow, yay, how brave, how courageous.
And
And
that's
left
the
my
thing that
and left my family going, what about us?
yeah. Yeah, that's the thing that and I'm glad that you're going there because there's so much. Like I said, that night was just the beginning of it all. Okay, there's
Yes.
those like when we lose loved ones, when something bad happens, everybody's is all it's exciting the funeral and I'm here for you and everything and all these things, But what about the after effects? Okay, the effect that people don't know about. I speak about this a lot with COVID. There's so many different things that we have gone through that we don't think about other people's situations, right? So for you, right, for you, your kids, your family at that point, okay, they have to be the ones to see you going through this at night. So what I wanted to ask you is that what happens at night when the lights go out? What happens when all the smoke settles and all the dust settles, all the smoke clears? What happens, when it's just you and your thoughts? Because we go through this a lot in our lives, right? And we go through whether it's divorce, whether it's illness, whether it's addiction. Everything is good. Well, all day we're busy, right? We got things going on in our world. We're going through everyday life, but at night when those lights go out, okay, and
Mhm.
it's just you, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and everyone else is sleeping. What happens then? Like, what are you doing? What are you thinking about during those moments, during the middle of the night?
That when the lights are out and it's just you at night, what happens when the lights go out?
Right.
You dance with the demons.
Mm.
You
Mm.
dance with the demons. You you spar with them. And most of the time, if you're not prepared for that type of a fight, you're getting your ass kicked. Really,
Sure.
I getting an emotional beatdown is much more difficult than getting a physical beatdown.
Yeah.
And for me personally, when the lights would go out, I went to some pretty dark places, and I'm not alone in that.
Right.
Here's the thing: when you mention when the lights go out, that those you fighting with those types of demons, it's not specific to nighttime, right?
Mm.
This was an ongoing throughout the day, throughout the night, as time goes on and people are expecting you to get over it and heal, right? um, it gets harder and harder,
Yeah.
uh, because those demons, they're not in anybody's time schedule, so they're going to just keep peppering away at you. And in my presentation, I call my presentation "The Fight After the Fight" for a reason,
Mm.
because as a law enforcement officer, they teach you what you're supposed to do to survive this fight on the streets.
Yeah.
So then you survive that, and you've got officers all over the country whose ultimate goal in life is to all go home. We all go home, right? That's your main goal. And I always say that's not enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough. I made it home twice, and I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do from there. And it was that lack of knowledge and training and preparation that makes it so difficult to fight this opponent, because you don't even know that you're going to have one. You don't even know there's a fight after the fight. So it's a difficult time, and it that opponent that you find yourself facing in the aftermath of something like this, that opponent that you find yourself facing when you finally come to terms with, hey, I was, for everybody's different. Hey, I was molested as a child, or I was raped, or I was neglected
Right.
by my parents, or I was physically abused, or I went and served during wartime situations to serve this country, and I gave and gave and gave, and then I come back with all of these demons that nobody sees, and then they all kind of ganging up on you. What are you supposed to do with that? What are you supposed to do with that when nobody tells you that it's even there, that the potential, even just the potential, even the hint of a chance that you could face that? What are you supposed to do with that? Well, you suffer in silence, like many people do. The
Yeah.
fact of the matter is, Joe, we aren't prepared for that type of a fight, whether it's in the line of duty or in our own personal lives. We aren't prepared for that unless we do the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got to
That's
do the work
that's
to
big.
prepare,
That's big.
just like anything else. And
What's
but
one
I
thing?
didn't even know that. I had to learn that.
What is one thing, something that you wish someone would have told you about this situation? Because you know what, we, like you said, they train us for so many different things, but when I was in a police academy, I didn't speak to anyone, who had been shot before in the line of duty.
Mhm,
And it's easy for them to get somebody in and tell the story. It's easy for someone
mhm,
to call, Ann Carrizales, and say, listen, would you come speak to the recruits? Would you come speak to young officers? You know, I would never. I know how to try to avoid that situation, but what happens when that situation hits? Okay, that's the biggest thing. We know to avoid drugs, right? But what happens
right.
when we become addicted? We know that we shouldn't allow men or women to put their hands on us. But what happens when we do become abused? These are things that apply to everyday life. What's one thing that you wish someone would have told you, prior to this situation happening?
I wish that somebody would have told me that there is a fight after the fight,
Mm,
and that opponent will be more relentless, more vicious, more just completely destructive and evil and violent than
yeah,
any that you've ever faced. The
sure.
potential for that opponent to do that to you. I wish somebody would have told me that as I entered into this career. I could take past traumas
Yeah,
and lessons that I learned from those and either make myself stronger in the form of preparing for that fight after the fight, or inadvertently allowing those past traumas and not dealing with those past traumas, this profession would rip the scab off of those past traumas, which would just simply serve as to exacerbate any other stuff that you're going to see in this career. They don't teach us that.
Yeah.
And now I'm speaking specifically from the standpoint of, I wish somebody would have told me this before I entered into my police career.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey, take those past traumas in your life and don't feel bad about them. Don't feel embarrassed about them or that you're damaged. Feel like you're coming into this even stronger, because this job has the potential to throw some punches at you.
Sure.
And you're going to see things that you can't unsee. But if you can lean on the resiliency that you've built from those past traumas, right? If you can fall back on, I can get through this because I've made it through that.
Yeah.
Right. They can serve. You can take that pain and you can turn it into power. You can take that pain and you can turn it into ammo if you do the work.
Yeah. And
then you can put those rounds downrange later, because this career, this career is designed to, that's what I wish. I wish somebody would have said, hey, Ann, I just want you to know that it's an honorable career.
Yeah.
But it is by its very makeup and design and what you're required to do, it is designed to snatch your soul.
Yeah.
If you let it.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful because there's this fight after the fight that could come for you. And I would have liked to have known that. I really would have. I would have liked to have known that. I would have liked to have had my, military brothers and sisters who deployed. I would have liked them to have known about that demon.
Yeah.
So that they could continue to work on their fight game to face that opponent. Because if our military members and our police officers were told about this opponent by the very fiber of what makes us who we are, we would have prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't have lost so many to their own hand.
I agree. Because we take psychological tests to get on the job, right?
Right.
We take psychological tests, certain parts of the military. But what happens after that first bad scene? What happens after that first, you find that first baby that's dead. You can't help them.
You put it away and you leave it there. And
sure.
Then you self-medicate with either drinking or drugs or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
For you.
Because it's not cool. It's not, maybe he can't handle the job now, or she can't handle the job.
But maybe you better think your career choice. Yeah.
Right.
That's not true.
Right.
That's not true, because the fact of the matter is, I have post-traumatic stress injury. I have it, AKA PTSD, right?
Sure.
I have this, but I'm still very effective at what I do because I handle my shit. I take care of my stuff. Sure. But it's ongoing. It's not, it's not like I did, 6 months of therapy and then I was done. No, you're not done. I'm never done. Yeah. I don't look at it that way. I look at it from the perspective of constantly trying to work on myself and learn things about myself that I didn't know before, or share my pain with other people so that I could help them heal their own pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that can be tricky because sometimes, what does that look like? It looks like, well, she's bragging on herself, or, a veteran that comes back from, like Vietnam era, my dad's a Vietnam vet. He doesn't talk much about what happened over there. Right. But this is the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the problem. Why are we not having this conversation? Why are there more, military vets and law enforcement officers, first responders that are taking their own lives quicker, than the bad guys are? They're killing themselves quicker than the bad guys are. That screams that we have a massive problem here.
Sure.
But if we just talk about it more, I think it works toward, squashing the stigma of, if I say that something's bothering me, if I say that, this dead baby call or whatever the case may be, this shooting or whatever it is bothering me, it's going to make me look like I'm weak.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case. I mean, that's just, we're human beings. We want people to look at us as human beings, but yet we in our own houses don't allow that for ourselves for some reason.
Human beings just doing a job, being a law enforcement officer is just a job. It's a career, and I'm no different than a guy who's, who's digging a ditch or, punching a clock at the factory or, operating on people. We're
Right.
just human beings, just like you, just different responsibilities in the world, and
Right.
like you said, talking about it, like even with any portion of your life, if I tell my kids about sex, they're going to want to do it. If I tell my kids about drinking alcohol, they're going to want to do it. No, it's actually the total
It's
opposite.
actually the total opposite.
Yeah.
Right.
And if we don't
Right.
talk about the
It,
situation, how are we going to come out with it? Yeah.
right. And it's about accepting the responsibility, right?
Yeah.
This is, this is something that we know has
Mhm.
the potential to happen to us as a first responder, as a law enforcement officer. Um, so we got to handle our stuff. We have to go in there and hold ourselves accountable. I was shot in October and I went back to work in February.
Yeah. That's a whole
I
nother.
had no business going back, right? But I
Right.
didn't know.
Right.
I didn't
Right.
know what I could potentially face. And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't always happen. Like a lot of people think, oh, she was in a shooting 2 weeks ago. She has PTSD. No, that's not how it works, actually.
Mm.
And to be completely honest, when I did go back to work, I really didn't feel like I was having a lot of the issues that I ended up having later. It didn't happen for several months later.
Yeah.
And that's called, delayed onset post-traumatic stress. And that is a very real thing. Delayed onset post-traumatic stress. You guys that are listening, you guys go Google this stuff up. Delayed onset post-traumatic stress is a real thing. It works. It's like a sneaky fighter, right? It's just like a sneaky fighter. This opponent is going to start attacking you when you least expect it. You might think it may give you a time or two to think you're good to go. And then you get back out there and you're handling your business. And then one day out of the blue, boom, it
Yeah.
starts peppering you up, peppering you up, peppering you up with punches. And you're like, whoa, what the heck, right? What's
And
going on?
did that come from you not getting the right amount of help that you needed, or talk therapy, or
Mhm.
going to see someone? Because I remember when, my chief actually made me go talk to someone because I refused. I said, listen, if you're gonna order me, then I'll go. But if you're offering me the option, then I'd rather not. And it wasn't
Right,
until he ordered me and I started talking about the situation that I realized I really needed to talk about the situation.
right,
Right.
right.
So for you, did that situation happen for you because you didn't get enough of the talk therapy, because you didn't get enough of it off of your chest, and then later on it came back out?
Absolutely. Because I wasn't even ordered to go to counseling after. I was not. I had After I had my first shooting the year prior. I was not shot during that officer involved shooting. I actually shot someone else, but I obviously still has its effects on you, right? I don't want to. I don't wake up in the morning and go, "Ooh, I hope I get to shoot someone today." It's just not how
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah.
So I went to one therapy session after that. And I was so proud of myself for it. Right.
Mm.
I took my family and everybody was good. You're good. You're good. Yeah, we're good. Okay, fine. Then the shooting happens where I ended up getting shot. And so I went back to that same therapist. So I actually went and did what I thought was me doing the right thing and being responsible, right, for my own stuff. And I'm going to do this because that's how I am. I always want to do stuff like super great and I want to be great at it. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be the best at it. And so I wanted to be like responsible and do the right thing by my family and show my partners that there was nothing wrong with it. Here's where I went wrong. I went maybe 2 or 3 times,
Mm.
and then I was super proud of myself, and I was done because I felt like, oh, I'm good to go. Because like I told you, it snuck up on me. And here's the thing, because I still speak to that therapist to this day, and she'll remind me like, hey, and I love her to death. I call her the old broad. I always go, that old broad. Something that old broad told me, right?
Right. Right.
She's amazing. She's taught me so much. But the old broad tells me, I told you that. I told you that during our first couple sessions, but you weren't receiving it. Like you have to be ready. You have to be ready and trust the process and receive it. And I just wasn't doing that. So that was kind of where I screwed up. I did it and I just didn't follow through. I didn't see it through, and I didn't trust the process enough to continue. And it bit me in the butt later. It kind of reminds me of back in my boxing days when my trainer used to say, "Stop admiring your punches, Anna. Stop admiring your punches."
Mm.
Right.
Mm.
What that is when a fighter, throws out a nice punch combination and doesn't snap it back. You're
Right.
supposed to throw the punch and snap it
Right.
back, throw the
Right.
punch and snap it back. Right. And when you make a connection, say you connect a punch combination or you do something and it's like, oh, that's so pretty. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
bam.
Right.
right? Because you're too busy admiring your own work. And I
Right.
think that's what I did. I kind of fell into that a little bit and I didn't follow through. And so when all that stuff kind of crept up on me, I was already back at work and I didn't want to alarm anyone that something was
Right.
wrong with
Right.
me,
Exactly.
So all of that stuff, it's easy to fall into that. It's really easy to fall into that stuff. And if you think about it, that's what the job kind of requires you to do,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
right?
unfortunate, but absolutely. Yeah.
So we're kind of fighting against our own training, if you
Hmm.
will,
Right. Right.
by going and getting this type of help. But at the end of the day, we're in a very unique profession where we're designed and trained to eliminate the threat, yes,
Sure.
but sometimes
Mm.
that threat can be us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you do with that, right? We know what some people do.
Right. Right.
But that is a very, very, very concrete, long-term, final decision for something that it really can be fixed. Post-traumatic stress injury, it's not a career ender. It doesn't have to be. Let's just say
Correct.
that.
Correct. Correct. Wow. Listen, I again, I couldn't have had a better uh, first guest on my podcast than you. I mean, you are the epitome of overcoming life, overcoming situations, overcoming, and the fact that you're still on the job, you're still doing the things that you don't have to do. Okay, that really says a lot. And my last question is this:
Okay.
is when you do decide to hang it all up, when you do decide to walk away, um, I pray that you'll take your story, and you have been,
Mhm.
uh, but it'll be different when you walk away from it and you're not on the job anymore. But my last question is this: is that what's next for Ann Carrizales? What is your ultimate goal after law enforcement? How do you how do you hope to help people, or are you just going to go and put your feet up on a beach, which you are entitled to? What's next for you after this?
Well, I've spent let's see, this past October was 7 years post shooting. And I spent a lot of those years working on myself,
Mhm.
healing with my family, having very difficult conversations, have
Sure.
the hard conversations, right? Uh, but I travel and I speak and I share my story with not just law enforcement officers across the country and outside of the country, but human beings, like just civilians.
Sure.
I've
Sure.
presented it in churches, I
Yeah.
presented it at law enforcement conferences and everything here in between, right? Um, so I would love to continue to do that and shed perspective into the family aspect of that
Yeah.
and continue to do that as long as God will let me do it. But I my ultimate goals are what I'd like to see for myself is I want to finish my book.
Hmm.
I've been writing. It's a very interesting process. It has been for me. Uh, and so I'd like to finish that book. I'd like to be like Joe and eventually get my own podcast off the ground. It's something that I've been thinking about for a while, but other projects have come and been on the front burner, and I've had to kind of put that in the back burner. So hopefully, I could focus on that. But mainly, I'd really like to focus on finishing my book and just getting to a place where I could slow down a little more, slow the noise down a little more,
Sure. Sure.
and I can really plug into helping not just law enforcement officers, but human beings in general um, crawl out of that dark hole
Yeah.
that you can kind of find yourself in. So, what's next for me? Book. That book's coming. It's coming. Um, Definitely dedicate my life to serving others in a way that will uh, help them navigate through these waters that can be really dark sometimes. So, I have lots of things in my mind that I want to do, but I happen to be one of those people where I'm a big believer, and I know, I know that not everybody's a God believing person, and that's fine.
Right.
But
Right.
but I can't tell you this story and not talk about that because
By all
because
means,
it's a big part of me. I'm a very spiritual person,
go right ahead.
and 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 I heard this saying years and years and years ago. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Mm.
And that really struck me.
Mm.
So those are my plans. Finish my book,
Yeah.
hopefully write more books, and continue to help people from outside of the patrol car. Right.
Yeah.
That would be what would be next for me. But if there's one thing I learned through this 7-year journey is that that everything else other than my 2 kids
Yeah.
is just not important.
Yeah.
I will never again put anything before them. So if all of those plans can vibe with that and it is God's will for me to continue to do that, then I will. Then
Yeah.
that's what's going to happen for me. Uh, I can't I can't see God taking me on this journey if it wasn't for a reason. So I believe that still hasn't revealed itself yet.
Yeah.
I just want to get it right. And because I want to get it right, I have found that I've had to move my priorities around a bit. And sometimes moving your priorities around isn't going to make everybody happy.
Mm.
When you assert certain rules and you become selfish and protect a certain space, a certain energy space that surrounds you, which is what I've gotten very good at, it's not
Sure.
going to make everybody happy. But in the end, it's something that we need to learn how to do in order to take care of ourselves. So for me, I want to continue to keep taking care of myself. I want to serve other people in a different way, but above all, I just want to protect my space. I want to protect my peace and my energy space, and I want to take this lesson and share it with people in a loving way. Um, that's maybe not going to have to, have my kids sitting up at night wondering if I'm coming back.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I know that I've earned that.
Yeah.
And
You have
what
more
I
than
want is I want other people to feel that they have too.
right. You
Yeah.
know, our situations that we go through in life, my listeners always hear me say they weren't for us. They were for us to pass on to someone else.
Hmm.
And the things that you are going through right now in your life, the things that you're experiencing right now in your life, you made it through for a purpose.
Hmm.
And if we hold on to it, and if we let it die right there, then we are being kind of selfish by not sharing it with someone else to help them get through the situation as well.
I've
So,
always felt like I have a duty. I have a duty to share it.
yeah,
And I've always felt like it's what God has truly wanted me to do. You need to
sure,
share this because
sure.
think about it. Back in 2013, we were never to know that in 2020 it was going to be such a difficult year for all of us here, right?
Right.
For all of us, really. That
Yeah.
all of these things, what you hear everybody saying 2020, 2020 sucks.
Mhm.
2020 has been full of lessons and
Yeah.
opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
We have to switch our mindset. It's the difference.
Yeah.
It's the difference.
How we
We
see.
have to switch our mindset.
Yeah.
In order to overcome, you've got to change your mindset. And if you want to overcome a lot of the bad things in your life that you've struggled to shed, then you have to learn to love it and embrace it and accept it. Acceptance is probably the most difficult part to get to, but it's there for the taking. And once you do that, ooh wee.
Mm.
Yep.
A different world. It's a whole different.
Yep.
Well, Ann, thank you so much. You have given the listeners a whole lot to take back with them, to take account of themselves for. And again, I couldn't have had anyone more special than you to kick off this journey on the way to touching millions and millions of lives. Okay, for those of you who are out there right now, make sure you download this, you share it, let somebody else know about it. Because at that point, you too are paying it forward in ways that you don't believe that you are. But by sharing this post and by sharing this podcast and commenting on it, does it help the podcast? Yeah, it does. But more importantly,
Helps
it helps
others.
others, right? It helps others. And that is
Helps
the
others.
whole intention of this podcast. So thank you for coming out, and thank you so much. I'm sure that we will see much more of you going forward. It's been a pleasure. You are a true warrior. Yes, you are a hero. Okay, whether you want to accept that or not, I'm going to give that to you because hey, you helped me more than you believe. More than you believe. So thank you so much. Hey, listen, again, don't forget to download this podcast, hit like, hit share, and listen,
Mhm.
watch out for the JH Overcomes podcast. We are going to be bringing you different stories from different people who have overcome many, many situations. And we promise you that you too can overcome. Thank you.